Now, yesterday we spoke to two parties, Change UK and the Liberal Democrats, campaigning on similar Remain platforms. Today we have two parties who want to leave with no deal. Nigel Farage is in Lincoln today as part of his roadshow and political rallies. Also there at the Lincolnshire Showground this evening will be their East Midlands European election candidate, Jonathan Bullock, who joins me now from our Lincoln studio. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Why should people vote for you? UKIP topped the poll last time, hugely influenced, changed the face of British politics. Shouldn't people just stick with them?
No, the UKIP unfortunately have gone down an avenue supporting Tommy Robinson, obsessed with Islam. It's not the way forward. The Brexit Party has been set up purely on this issue of democracy. 17 million people voted 3 years ago now to leave the EU. We have to implement that. The Conservative Party have failed to implement it. Labour don't really know where they stand. The rest of the parties just want to remain. So we are the only party saying we will respect what the British people voted for 3 years ago and leave the EU.
Can you think of one single difference from UKIP as far as Brexit is concerned?
Yes, we're not interested in the issue of Islam. Of course, people are against
Brexit.
Regarding Brexit, we're campaigning to leave on World Trade Organization rules. I don't know UKIP's current stance on this, but we want to leave as soon as possible, and we think that can be done, and it can be done with the chance of a free trade deal between the EU and Britain eventually, but we need to get out first so that we can then sort out those trade deals.
This business of leaving on WTO terms, it's a fantasy, isn't it? No country in the world does it.
That's untrue. Most of our trade is actually done on World Trade Organization rules.
Which countries trade solely on WTO rules?
Most countries trade on WTO rules with the other countries. What we need to do
they
is
have
to
free
sign...
trade agreements, don't they?
Yes, and what we need to do is sign those free trade agreements. But of course, it's chicken and egg. We can't sign those trade agreements until we're outside the EU. But we've got about a dozen countries lining up to do that. And I think long term, we can certainly have trade agreements with countries such as America, with India, with Australia, countries which at the moment we are denied having trade agreements with.
Well, of the 36 free trade agreements that have been that we have, only 9 have been rolled over so far. It's not very impressive.
Well, I'm afraid that's the Conservatives have been responsible for that, and I'm not here to defend them. But I think we need to show that we're going to leave. People don't know where they stand. Even international politicians are saying, oh, are they going to remain in the EU or not? We voted 3 years ago, so it has to be on democratic principles that we have to implement, as the government promised, implement the result of that referendum.
Do you think people really do, or are there enough people that really do want to leave as soon as possible with no deal?
Yes, I think they're fed up. And we've just been walking around Lincoln Market today, Central Market. Absolutely phenomenal response to Nigel Farage. People were coming up saying, you're right, let's just get on with it and get out now.
Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan Bullock. UKIP won the most votes in the last European elections, as I was just saying. However, they now find themselves far behind Nigel Farage's new party in the polls. As we've heard, there have been plenty of criticisms of their approach, most notably over MEP candidate Carl Benjamin's remarks about rape and the Labour MP Jess Phillips. Just like the Brexit Party, UKIP also wants to leave the EU with no deal. Richard Braine is second on the list of UKIP's candidates for London, and he joins me in the studio now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me in.
It's a pleasure. What do you make of what Jonathan Bullock says? You're a party obsessed with Islam.
Well, it's nonsense, of course, and obviously the press is trying to push this far right meme, but in fact, really, UKIP is more connected with working class people, and that's what the press means by far right these days. As regards Carl Benjamin, I just want to correct you. He made a joke about not raping someone. The BBC is quite happy to broadcast, for instance, The Life of Brian, which has rape jokes. And of course, don't forget that the BBC did harbour and protect a absolutely prolific paedophile for decades. So I don't think really the BBC or a lot of the press should be...
Well, it's not the BBC, is it? I mean, that this man made what he says was a joke about rape. Most people don't joke about
not
rape.
It was a joke about not raping someone.
And then he said...
important distinction to make.
And then he made a joke about raping her.
No, he didn't. He actually made a joke about people putting pressure on him to say that he would.
That's incredibly offensive, isn't it? made Jess Phillips cry in the
Well,
street.
every single day we see it repeated falsely in the press and even by this programme that he made a joke about rape, as you've just done. So when are we going to start telling the truth and make sure that everybody understands he made a joke about not raping someone?
Well, do you think that's appropriate? Do you think that's
Monty Python
appropriate? Well,
made
never
jokes
mind
on the
about Monty
BBC
Python.
about
We're
rape.
talking about UKIP
It's
now.
absolutely nothing new. Now, let's get on to the issue of trade. About
can I just
7% of
ask you one thing?
7% of the world
Are you
trade is done under
embarrassed
FTAs.
by his remarks?
No,
You're not?
no, not slightly.
Is it something you'd say?
I might or might not. It's in bad taste. I accept that. But then lots of jokes are and lots of humour is. Go to any pub in this country and you'll find people making bad taste jokes.
It does suggest UKIP has changed.
I don't think so, no. I think it suggests that the mainstream media and establishment are out to kill UKIP and they're prepared to dredge up through 3 years of very good, moderate, liberal discourse produced by Carl Benjamin on his website and find 3 years ago one instance of him saying something a bit risque and then concentrate purely on that. It's Alinsky tactics to concentrate on it.
Risque?
But, well, it certainly is. And
Right.
It's bad taste, fair enough. But, there have been plenty of bad taste jokes. I mean, Jess Phillips herself made a bad taste joke about comparing the victims of the Cologne attacks to a night out in Birmingham. That's a very bad taste because that was people who were actually assaulted in Cologne. And to make jokes about that, I think, is also bad taste. But
Right. Well, what about your policy on Brexit? Is there any difference with the Brexit Party at all?
The difference is that we have a published manifesto, we have members, and most importantly, we have a democratic structure, which is why Nigel Farage left, because he doesn't like a democratic structure in a party. His new party doesn't have one. He didn't like the fact that our elected board, the NEC, stopped him putting a certain person at the top of a Welsh Assembly list.
But that's
and
all internal
that's
party
really
politics. I mean, voters don't really bother about that, do they?
But it's why he didn't. That's actually why he left. He had a very good party, 30,000 members, manifesto, 27-year track record of opposing membership of the EU, and we've worked very hard on that for a long time. He had a ready-made party right there, but he chose to leave it, and people need to ask themselves why.
Why do you think they're doing so well in the opinion polls then?
Well, I think that he's a very efficient communicator. He does well on media. But I think the main reason is that the media and the mainstream and the establishment have decided to give him the oxygen of publicity. And I suspect that the real reason for that is that the Brexit Party is really controlled opposition. I think ultimately it will belong to the Tory Party. It is the life raft for the Tory Party to get out of the appalling mess they've made in this country. And so that's why I think it's getting mainstream support. And I think that it's quite possible that that UKIP, who after all named both the Brexit Party and the independent group, because it's the UKIP policy that they've named themselves after, that UKIP will survive those parties, outlive them, in fact.
Thank you very much, Richard Braine.